We're live.
Okay, good morning, everybody. This is the Senate Transportation Committee, and it is Thursday, January 20th, and we have full house here this morning, I believe, and our item is the franchise laws, changes to them, and we have a number of folks here this morning, and the first one on my list is David Bright, attorney for the Alliance of Automobile Innovation. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Good. Thanks for being here. Go right ahead.
Thank you. So as you said, my name is David Bright. I'm an attorney with the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. Our association represents automobile manufacturers that together produce 99% of all automobiles sold in the United States every year. We also represent tier one suppliers for automobile vehicles. Again, I'm here today to give you an overview of the suggestions that our association suggested to amend Chapter 108. In the interest of the committee's time, I'll limit my oral remarks to our suggestions, but I will note for the committee that I did submit a letter for the record that reviews the suggestions from some of the other witnesses today. And before I jump into the specifics of our proposals, which you saw in the DMV's report, perhaps I should give some context for our thinking on this. And it begins with Act 63. The state of Vermont, when it passed that, really solidified that there is a bifurcated system of regulation for distribution of automobiles in the state. And what that means is that there are costs and inefficiencies that some competitors labor under, while other competitors do not. And that is both not in the interest of those competitors, but also not the consumers, because consumers benefit when companies are on equal footing, all competing for their business. And so the unique aspect of Act 63 is that the State Dealer Association was okay with it. Okay with having some competitors not in the franchise system while other competitors were. And so we look at the situation and say, well, if the state does not want to defend the franchise system and the State Dealer Association does not want to defend the franchise system, why should auto manufacturers be the only ones defending it? And so the theme with our proposed amendments to Chapter 108 is to, one, eliminate that bifurcated system of regulation, and failing that, to at least mitigate the harm of having that bifurcated system of regulation for distribution of vehicles. So again, that's our thinking on this, and I'll go through the specific amendments that we propose. But again, every single one of those is designed to make all companies be on a level playing field so that everyone can compete fairly. And so the first amendment that we suggested gets right at the heart of that. Allows all automakers to sell zero emission vehicles directly to consumers. Again, that's what Act 63 did. It allowed manufacturers of only zero emission vehicles to sell directly to consumers if they did not have franchisees. That's what this amendment does. It does not say all automobiles can be sold directly to consumers. It takes the exception that Act 63 provided, zero emission vehicles, and applies that to manufacturers that have dealers. And so the effect of that, one, it's fair with respect to zero emission vehicles, or ZEVs as we call them. Everyone is treated equally. But it could also help with adoption of ZEVs in the state of Vermont. And the reason I say that is that manufacturers would be free to add points wherever they think it's most effective, without the restrictions that the current law applies to manufacturers that wish to add or move a store. And so that really allows us to be agile, respond to the consumer demand, and use alternative types of stores, whether they be smaller stores, kiosks, what have you. Encourages innovation. And so the way we do that is two parts. We amend the definition of dealer in section 4085, and then we amend section 4097, which deals with unfair competition. And then continuing on this theme of fairness and access to consumers, The next thing that we identified in Act 63 was a very unusual prohibition on manufacturers selling their parts directly to consumers. A automobile franchise contract between a manufacturer and a dealer does not give the dealer an exclusive right to sell manufactured parts. Indeed, manufacturers sell their parts both through dealers as well as independent parts stores, both online and brick and mortar stores. So if a manufacturer wants to sell parts directly to consumers, there's no reason that a manufacturer should not be able to. And this is not a norm by any means. Vermont is unique in prohibiting manufacturers from doing that. And the effect is simply to limit consumer choice, consumer convenience. So again, this is something that we suggest that the state eliminate from Act 63, again, to put all competitors on equal footing and to give consumers convenience in their shopping. And so the way we do that, similar to our previous amendment, we look at section 4085 to amend the definition of dealer. And then we amend section 4097 on unfair competition to remove that prohibition on selling parts and accessories directly to consumers. And then continuing on this theme of consumer choice and consumer convenience, Act 63 also prohibits manufacturers from engaging in what are called subscription programs. And a subscription program, if you're not familiar with it, essentially a customer pays a monthly fee, much like you would your Netflix account, something like that. And in exchange, the customer gets access to a vehicle and they can switch between vehicles. So for example, you could use a electric car or fuel efficient vehicle for your weekday commute, and then switch over to a larger SUV for a family outing on the weekend. It's something that we think appeals to consumers who are not ready to purchase a car, or to consumers that just want flexibility, or to consumers that want to sort of dabble in different brands of vehicles and get accustomed to them. These are very much programs in their infancy. Manufacturers are experimenting with them. Independent companies are experimenting with them. Even dealers are experimenting with them. And whether they catch on or not, that's entirely up to consumers, right? And right now, I think everyone is simply just trying to build the best mousetrap, as it were, and see who can get the consumer's business. But again, Act 63 said manufacturers can't participate in this. Only dealers and only independent companies can participate in this. And there's no reason to do that. Again, you're just simply precluding customers from having an option to choose from. So again, we think that's unfair, and we suggest removing that from the code. I should mention that takes effect later this year. It had a delayed effective date in Act 63. So there is still time to avoid the harm from that. But the way to do it, again, much like the other two amendments we suggested, amend the definition of new motor vehicle dealer in section 4085, and then amend section 4097, which again is on unfair competition. Moving on, the next item that we addressed in our proposed amendments relates to warranty payment calculations. And this is, I would say, by far the part of the franchise code that adds the most cost to manufacturers and creates the biggest problem for manufacturers that are trying to compete by following the franchise code against manufacturers who are free to compete without complying with this. And the context for it is that manufacturers who use franchisees all honor their warranties by sending the consumers to the local dealer for repairs, and then the manufacturer compensates the dealer. That's an aspect that's heavily regulated by state law in terms of how much the manufacturer must pay the dealer. State law requires us to pay the dealer its retail rate, meaning the dealer will collect a series of customer paid receipts. It gets to choose the set of them, and then sends it to the manufacturer and says, this is how much I charge the markup on parts. This is how much I charge the public for labor. And the rub with that is that a manufacturer, as you could probably guess, is by far typically the largest volume purchaser of service work at a dealership. Typically, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 20% of a dealer's service work comes from that warranty work. So it's a volume purchase. It's work that is stable It's more or less constant throughout the year. And the dealer has no customer retention costs or advertising costs associated with it. But indeed, rather than getting a volume purchase discount, we get the opposite. We end up paying more than anyone else pays. And if every manufacturer is competing under the franchise code, then that at least treats everyone equally. We all suffer equally. Nobody gets an unfair advantage over anyone else. But when you have manufacturers that don't have to comply with this, that's when you start getting problems with the cost. Added cost has to be passed on somehow. This is the thing that can lead to some competitors not being able to sell cars at a price that's competitive with their competitors. And make no mistake, I mean, years ago, Tesla was somewhat unique in its vehicles. But today and going forward, many manufacturers are competing for the exact same customers, for the exact same business. And if they're laboring under a system that adds costs that their competitors don't have to labor under, that's going to have long-term problems for the health of the industry. So what we propose is striking the majority of this language that requires manufacturers to pay retail. That would allow the manufacturer and the dealer to negotiate a contract that establishes how much the manufacturer will pay the dealer to do that work. And those contracts already exist. I sometimes call it the default payment option in case the dealer doesn't want to go through the process of finding repair orders, sending them into the manufacturer and calculating its rate. And typically somewhere in the neighborhood of 40% of the dealers in the state prefer that process. It doesn't involve labor or paperwork, and they find themselves to be sufficiently compensated by the manufacturer. Again, they turn a profit. All dealers turn profits on warranty work. And that would really go a long way towards mitigating the disparate effects between a manufacturer that's paying these high retail rates and manufacturers that essentially can do their own warranty repairs at cost. So you see our proposed amendments in section 4086, that long block of strikes. That's what that's getting at. It's removing the obligation to pay retail rates.
David, have you got many more? Because I'm limited on time this morning. Is there much more at this point?
Yes, I apologize, Senator.
Yeah.
I will just mention one last thing.
Okay.
Vermont is somewhat unique in that it prohibits a manufacturer from including a right of first refusal in its franchise agreements. These are terms that are common in really many business contracts. A right of first refusal is critical to a manufacturer precisely because Vermont law makes it so difficult both to eliminate or terminate a poorly performing dealer or add a new dealer into a community. So if a dealer is not performing well, we really don't have any options, and the consumers in that community don't have any options. So whenever a sale of a dealership occurs, it's critical for the manufacturer to be able to make sure that whatever dealer is coming in is the best dealer for the consumers in that area. So we suggest eliminating the prohibition on right of first refusal. Again, we have explanations and details for all the other amendments that we propose. We'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee has now or at a later date. But again, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today and thank the committee for the time.
Any questions before we move on? As we recall, the committee, this is discussion carried over from last year when we authorized Tesla to sell direct. And there was a consensus that we certainly wanted to protect the dealers that were already dealers in Vermont. So any questions at this time before we move on? Senator Perchley.
Yeah, just really quick, Mr. Bright, can you send us your suggestions separately from the report? Because we have your letter that you sent that refers to those. And I know they're in the report the DMV issued that just listed all of the suggestions they get, but I think it would be good if we had your suggestions separate.
I'd be happy to do that, Senator. We'll do that today.
If you just send it to, Ms. Lowell, our committee assistant, that would be great.
Okay, all right. Any other questions before we move on? I see none at this point. Okay. Next, we have Mitchell J. or Bob Cody from the dealers. Who would like to go next?
Yeah, I think I'll go next, Mr. Mazza.
Okay, yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah. Hi, good morning. For those that
Morning.
might not know me, my name is Mitchell J. I'm a new motor vehicle dealer with two franchises here in Barry Montpelier and a used car store down in White River Junction. I want to really thank you for the opportunity just to allow us to testify and all the work over the last 3 years we put in on some of these motor vehicle franchise laws and working some carve outs for the electric vehicle, sold electric vehicle manufacturers. Also, thank you for taking the time to create this study so we can look at it. I don't want to take up a lot of your time. I do say that we categorically deny a lot of what the Alliance is alleging, and I don't want to take your time to go over it point by point because it can get into the weeds pretty fast sometime. But I do want to just stress that we still believe that VADA, that the franchise models is good for Vermont consumers and the state of Vermont, and it'll help with a broad adoption of EVs in Vermont. The citizens of the state of Vermont have benefited from the franchise law, and the franchise system will ensure that Vermont consumers get a competitive price at state-of-the-art facilities that are conveniently located through the state. Our dealerships employ local residents who are trained in sales and service of new motor vehicles. And because these dealerships are locally owned, they can be properly regulated by the state of Vermont. We're required to carry significant insurance and bonds to protect the consumer and public. I think there's a myth out there a lot of times, sometimes that, the argument from the Alliance that the franchise laws don't protect customers, warranty reimbursement add costs. We over the years have realized that we had to do certain things to protect consumers in Vermont, the Lemon Law, to make sure that manufacturers did take care of customers despite them always saying they want to. I agree, I think they want to, but these companies are so big and monolithic that it can take them months to respond. And that's where that local dealer becomes the advocate to help that customer get through that maze at times and everything. We've asked for 7 things. You've heard a lot of them, but we haven't delved into it. I think the Alliance, even today in their testimony, brought up, some concerns we have. They talk about facility requirements and vendor. We have concerns. As a dealer, we want to be in the right place with the right market. But we as dealers have invested hundreds of millions of dollars in Vermont in facilities, training, and equipment. I heard him mention one of the things is more agile with smaller stores. I keep wondering with new business models and more stuff being purchased online, if smaller stores isn't the answer, but I'm watching many of the manufacturers want bigger palaces built instead. There's a disconnect sometimes with our manufacturers. And so, we've said, let's make sure that they can supply the cars we need to justify the expense and that we don't ask for new stores more than once every 10 years. I had a point where I went through 3 sign upgrades in 12 years at $50,000 a piece. I really don't think changing the logo on my sign benefited Vermont consumers that well. We're asking about warranty and pre-delivery. We're trying to help clarify it a little bit in this one. And I categorically deny that it adds costs. We end up discovering that is some of our least profitable work. We have to use our highest trained, best techs to do the work. The factory still gets to set the time they pay for the job, which is substantially below the industry standard. So they are getting quite a discount off what a retail consumer pays. And some of the work we do for them in small dealers in Vermont requires us to buy special tools that we may never use, though we spend thousands of dollars for these tools. So there is a lot of costs that go on to doing this work and everything. And there are costs that direct EV manufacturers will start to absorb too. I look at Tesla out there, and my wife spends some time in Florida. I mean, they've built a huge store with a huge service department. I'm shocked how large the service department is. So they now are starting to see those same costs. Now they have to have a store, they have to pay real estate tax, they have to pay tax good money. There's not this huge difference. What we have done is notice some things like a tendency to want to ship us high dollar warranty parts sometimes now at no cost. And that seems like we're skirting the spirit of the law, which was to reimburse us. The other thing we're trying to do was, we thought a few years ago, we simplified that formula so it was clear for everybody, but we're still hearing from some dealers that the manufacturer makes it really difficult to come up with that calculation. And I know in the case of one of my manufacturers, I'm able to get the increase, but I've done it 3 times, and every time they change the rules on what parts they want to count. So that's why we felt we needed more clarification. Consumer data is a big one. From my point of view, not only as a dealer, but protecting Vermont consumers. These data agreements seem to be very lopsided, asking for huge insurance policies in some cases from the dealer to protect the manufacturer from any information they might have given us, but on the other hand, minimal protections to us. And I'm not sure that some of the information the manufacturer asked for, I think the Vermont consumer would be shocked if they realize what they're asking for. So we're trying to say that, you know, we need to level that playing field and make sure that data is safe and we know what's being done with it. You know, the subscription card thing we talked about, we can go over it again if you'd like. We talked about it last year. And we propose some changes on burden of proof. You know, and we've defined relevant to a dealer's market. And so, you know, I think some of those are simple to understand, that if a manufacturer says that a store is underperforming based on a statewide average, but that dealer may be in a town with 14 franchises, yet the other 7 or 8 dealers are in towns with only 4 or 5 franchises, that's obviously something different in that market. So I'm happy to answer questions. I'm sure Bob would like to talk more, but I'd really ask you to please consider adding the 7 items we've had, putting it in a bill that you find is appropriate, and trying to help us move this forward. But with that, I'll see if Bob has something to add, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. I want to respect your time.
Thank you, Mitchell. Appreciate it. Bob, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for allowing us to speak today and meet, and really thank you all for the efforts you've put forth in the last 3 years and listening to us and our proposals. As Mitchell said, I'm of the same ilk. I completely oppose the Alliance's proposals. You know, Mitchell touched upon the warranty. The reality is they set the rules that we have to play by. That's how it works. And anybody that's ever been in a franchise situation understands how the reimbursement works. At any moment in time, up to, I don't know what the state law is off the top of my head, they can come back and audit us. And if we miss, don't dot an I or cross a T, the consumer still got the repair done and got the benefit of having that warranty and didn't have to pay for anything. But if we make a mistake on our paperwork, we get charged back the whole amount. So, and Mitchell's right, it is the least profitable. I actually have a fleet account that is about 20% of my business, and they pay substantially more than than we get reimbursed, because they pay the average labor time guides that are more real time. So that's basically all I have to say. I really appreciate the time, but I'm open for any questions that you may have for us.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, members, any questions at this time?
Really quick, sir.
Yes, so Senator Chittenden, sorry.
Mitchell J., I don't see anything in our materials of any written comments. So I was listening intently, and Bob Cody, I do see 3 things from you, but if you have any written documents to follow up on, I'd certainly appreciate that.
Well, and I don't have access. I mean, I could go and stuff and look. I believe that we had sent over from VADA the proposed amendments that we wanted Athena to consider, trying to see if you guys could find a bill to put it in. But I mean, if you would like anything more than what we've supplied, I'd be happy to try to get it to you and everything. So.
No need, just didn't want to miss anything if you had prepared something. Thank you.
Okay.
I know in previous conversations we've had over the years, there was a lot of community support for the dealers of Vermont, of what they do for their communities and how involved they are. And we certainly want to make sure we handle this properly, because we don't want to do anything that's going to infringe on the ability for dealers to continue to sell their products in Vermont and try to work together. So any comments from any of the senators this morning? This is the time. I know, yes, Senator Ingalls.
I'm sitting here and listening to the Alliance, what I would consider respectfully to be inaccurate in a lot of ways, because I've been in that business for a long time. And I'm really perplexed at a business that makes billions of dollars off of the consumers, the public, through their franchise partners who do a lot to support the community, a lot more than the franchises, for sure. They made these agreements willingly. The franchisees have done their part, and to sit there and to denigrate what these franchisees have done kind of angers me a little bit, enough so that I really would go and I really see what the dealers are up against. And I'm really in the frame of mind to go and find some more protections for the dealers. And that's where I'm at, and I'll end it there.
Anybody else? Senator Perchlik.
Well, I have a comment sort of along the lines of Senator Ingalls there, but I wondered if we were going to hear from DMV first.
Sure. We have them on in the waiting room. I think Wanda Manoli, the commissioner, is with us this morning.
Yeah, she's here. Yeah, there she is.
Hello,
Yes.
apologies there. I'm sorry, Senator,
That's all
I
right.
missed the question.
I think your name was brought up, and Senator Perchlik has a question, perhaps.
Well, I saw that Michael Smith was on the agenda, and I didn't know if DMV was on the agenda just in case there was an issue or questions, or if you guys had comments on the issue, on the testimony we heard today.
So Deputy Commissioner Smith and myself have joined. We don't have any particular comments. The testimony you're receiving now, I think, highlights the overview we provided on the report. And we'll continue to monitor and be available if there are any changes made, because our focus will be on impact on operations and managing the dealers. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, something else, Senator Perchlik? Go right ahead.
I was going to say that I haven't looked at all the detailed statutory changes. I looked at them when we got the original report, but I think it might be helpful to take the changes that were suggested by the ADA and have Anthea look at them and get them into a form that we could consider them possibly as an amendment to the DMV bill, or just to look at it as an official amendments.
That's a good idea. I think that would be a good idea. And Thea, you're not with us this morning, are you? Probably not. Anyway, we can follow up on that.
I can talk to her if you want.
Yeah, you can talk to her on that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Senator Kitchell, any comment or?
No, I wish I could figure this out a little bit better, but I'm also feeling that this is we're getting into jurisdiction of another committee. And I'm just wondering how we want to proceed with whatever we do, and what in the past when we've dealt with franchise law, what does it go into? Economic development, I would think. And this is an arcane area that, I must admit, I don't really have a lot of understanding. This is kind of new. On the other hand, I think the Vermont businesses, the dealers have laid out their concerns, and certainly Senator Ingalls' perspective as someone who has been in the business gives a direct knowledge as well as the testimony. So I don't know. I will say, obviously, my brother-in-law's got a lot of dealerships, and I haven't talked to him, so I'm not, it's not as though I'm being lobbied one way or the other. I'm just thinking that before we get in, how much we want to get into this, and where we go, and what other committees have got to be involved is really what's going through my mind at this point.
That's a good point, Senator Kitchell. I think that's well said. I think we should probably get together with Anthony, talk about this and see how far we go with this. We know in the past we've discussed these issues, and we know how important dealers are in the communities and statewide. And so we have had some input, but maybe we need others also at this time. I guess we have to know our limitations, which is great. But it's a good discussion to have periodically, get up to date, hear from the dealers and, the opposition or whatever. But I think it's a good discussion to have. Anybody else have any comments this time? Anybody want to jump back in? David, Mitch, or Bob?
No, I just like to really thank you for taking the time to listen to us today and everything. So.
Well, no, it's an important issue, and I think whatever role we can play, certainly get all the facts out there, and because we have dealing with Department of Motor Vehicles, we do play a role in some of it, but some issues probably we don't. But at least we can make some recommendations or offer some input into what our thoughts are, because I know we've discussed these issues over the years, and not only, but we also hear from dealers occasionally that a dealer has to spend $500,000 on a new storefront or tile floor or whatever, and it's got to be absorbed somewhere. This was brought up because of last year, as we all know, Tesla wanted to sell directly, and we did allow that, but we also want to keep our fingers on the pulse here to make sure that we're not letting something slip through that doesn't do well for all the dealers in Vermont. Anything else? Any other comments this morning from anyone?
Thank you. I just want to reiterate what Mitchell said. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, well,
This committee has been very helpful for us to at least put our case forward. Thank you.
How's the product? The product's still hard to get by these days. Everything, boy, I tell you.
Just as we spoke, 2 vehicles dropped off. I think that's 2 vehicles for the week. We're happy.
Oh my God, can you imagine that? I talked to a truck dealer the other day, and they said they manufacture big trucks. They take the chip, put it in that truck, and drive it off the assembly line, and they take it out, put it in the next truck. And I can't imagine the demand is there for vehicles, and you can't buy them. It's a crazy market, I guess, at this point. You hear people, the used car market has gone crazy, I guess, and the new ones, you can't get them. It's, whoever heard that, you used to go to a dealer and see 150 cars in a parking lot. Now, if you see 1 or 2, everybody gets excited. When's that going to break loose anyway? How long is that going to be before probably the
I'm hearing 3rd quarter, this, because the chip has become the new oil market. It's out there, and manufacturers are bidding on them. So yeah.
Wow. Are we producing more chips? You think, are we going to produce more in the United States, or is that the trend?
Yeah, that's what they're looking for, but they don't have the facilities up and running yet. So I think it's going to go through the 3rd quarter, maybe even the 4th quarter.
I think we got to get in the chip market.
Yes.
Actually, Global Foundries is one of the major suppliers of
right here in Essex,
for the automotive industry.
Yes.
But I understand they're working 24 hours a day.
Well, they have a help problem too. They can't hire help, and they're advertising every day for employees a night shift or whatever shift, and they're paying premium dollars. But there's as everyone knows, the labor shortage is all over the country these days. So anyway, Senator Perchlik.
It just looked like Mr. Bright maybe had a last comment.
Sure. Okay, Mr. Bright, I don't see you on the screen. Go right ahead. Yep. Sorry.
Oh, yes, I was just going to echo my thanks to the committee for the time today.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else? Anybody else have anything? Okay, at this point, we will continue our thoughts on this and get more information and continue to discuss with other committees and what we're going to do next. So we'll keep you informed if we're having another hearing and get everybody back together, whatever we're going to do, we'll hear from our staff person. Okay, thank you very much for this, the comments. Thank you, appreciate it. Okay. Our next item this morning, I don't know if we're available right now, we're a few minutes early. District Maintenance and Fleet Division budget. Wayne Gamble, are you with us yet this morning or? Jeannie, are
Yeah.
there?
Todd Law is,
Todd Law's here, okay.
Yeah, if you're okay, I'd like to wait for the boss, but
Okay, all right. Well, all right, then let's take a 5 minutes right now and we'll see everybody in 5 minutes or so.
5
Okay.
minutes, that's
Quarter up.
9:45. Can we round it
9:45.
to
9:45. Okay, thank
Okay.
you.